In a powerful and emotional statement, the family of former Zambian President Edgar Lungu has declared, "We don't consider Zambia our home anymore." But why such a heartbreaking decision? Is it fear, pain, or pure defiance? Tonight, we uncover the truth behind this stunning declaration and what it means for the soul of Zambia. In a move that has sent shockwaves across Zambia and beyond, the family of former President Edgar Chagwa Lungu has issued a deeply emotional and controversial statement. "We do not wish to return to Zambia. It is no longer our home." These words, reportedly spoken by a senior family member during ongoing tensions over Lungu's funeral, have reignited fierce national debate. Why would the family of a man who led the country for 6 years choose to turn their backs on it? Tonight, we explore what pushed the Lungu family to this breaking point. Is this personal pain, political protest, or something more strategic? The family of late President Edgar Chagwa Lungu has spoken out, and their message has stunned the entire country. In this full documentary, InspirAfrica official investigates why the Lungu family no longer wants to return to Zambia. The emotional statement by Tasila Lungu. Reactions from both UPND and PF supporters. Hidden legal, political, and emotional reasons behind this decision. What this means for Zambia's future. Is this exile force emotional or strategic? Don't miss this powerful and balanced exploration of the post-Lungu Zambia divide. The Lungu family's emotional declaration, articulated by former First Lady Esther Lungu in a Pretoria High Court affidavit, stems from a combination of personal loss, perceived persecution, and a bitter dispute over the funeral arrangements for Edgar Lungu. Several key factors contributed to this statement. Political feud with the UPND government. Edgar Lungu and Hichilema were long-standing political rivals, with their animosity dating back years. Hichilema defeated Lungu in the 2021 presidential election, ending Lungu's 6-year presidency 2015 to 2021. During Lungu's tenure, Hichilema faced imprisonment in 2017 on treason charges after his motorcade allegedly failed to give way to Lungu's convoy, an incident that highlighted their deep-seated rivalry. After taking office, Hichilema's administration pursued anti-corruption investigations targeting Lungu's family and allies, including Esther Lungu, who faced court cases and property seizures. Lungu himself accused the UPND government of harassment, claiming he was under virtual house arrest and restricted from traveling abroad for medical treatment. These actions fueled the family's perception of being targeted and unsafe in Zambia. Funeral dispute. Following Lungu's death, a major conflict arose over his funeral arrangements. The Zambian government, led by Hichilema, planned a state funeral with full military honors, arguing that Lungu, as a former president, was a national figure whose burial should occur in Zambia at the designated presidential burial site. However, Lungu's family, citing his dying wish that Hichilema should not come anywhere near his body, resisted this plan. They sought a private funeral in South Africa, where Lungu died, to honor his wishes and avoid what they perceived as a politicized spectacle. The government's insistence on controlling the funeral, including filing a lawsuit in a South African court to halt the family's plans, escalated tensions. The family viewed this as an attempt to override their wishes, further deepening their sense of alienation. Perceived persecution and safety concerns. In her affidavit, Esther Lungu stated that the family no longer felt safe or welcome in Zambia due to ongoing oppression and persecution by the UPND government. She referenced specific grievances, including the government's alleged interference in Lungu's access to healthcare in Zambia, which she claimed delayed his diagnosis of terminal esophageal cancer. The family argued that had Lungu received treatment earlier, his condition might have been manageable. Additionally, ongoing court cases against Esther and other family members, including Tasila Lungu for alleged corruption, were cited as evidence of targeted harassment. Esther's affidavit noted that the family was seeking to change their immigration status to permanently reside in South Africa, signaling a profound sense of disconnection from Zambia. Emotional and personal loss. The statement also reflects the family's grief and frustration. Esther described her final conversation with Lungu on June 3, 2025, before he was sedated and placed on a ventilator, as a painful farewell. The family's decision to prioritize Lungu's dying wishes over national protocol underscores their emotional attachment to his legacy and their desire to protect his dignity in death. The public nature of the dispute, coupled with the government's legal actions, likely intensified their sense of being disrespected and marginalized in their home country. Tasila Lungu's role and public frustration. The heart of the storm was Tasila Lungu, Edgar Lungu's daughter and former Lusaka deputy mayor. She became the unofficial face of the family, appearing in interviews and public forums to express their side. In a recent statement, she accused the government of freezing the family's assets, denying Lungu a dignified medical evacuation, and humiliating him even in death. "My father was forced to live like a fugitive in his final days," she said. "Why would we feel safe in a country that rejected him?" Supporters rallied behind her, but critics questioned her motives, claiming she was using emotion to block legal accountability. Tasila Lungu, Edgar Lungu's daughter and a member of parliament for Chihuahua, has emerged as a central figure in the family's response to her father's death and the ensuing funeral dispute. Her role and public statements, including a recent interview, highlight her influence and emotional stake in the situation. Role in the family and PF. Tasila has been a vocal advocate advocate for her father's legacy and the family's position. As a sitting MP and a prominent figure within the PF, she has taken a leadership role in negotiations with the Zambian government and in communicating the family's stance to the public. Family spokesperson Makibi Zulu has often spoken alongside Tasila, emphasizing her authority within the family's decision-making process. Her parliamentary status gives her a platform to influence public opinion and rally PF supporters, making her a key player in the political dimensions of the dispute. Public announcement of Lungu's death. Tasila was the first to publicly confirm her father's death on June 5, 2025, in a short video statement shared on social media. Dressed in mourning attire, she announced that Lungu had died in a Pretoria clinic, emphasizing that he was treated with dignity and privacy. Her invocation of the national motto, One Zambia, One Nation, was a poignant call for unity, but it also hinted at the underlying tensions as she made the announcement before any official statement from Hichilema's government. This move underscored the family's desire to control the narrative around Lungu's death. Recent interview and statements. While specific details of a recent interview are not fully outlined in the provided sources, Tasila's public statements, particularly through Makibi Zulu, have consistently emphasized the family's wish to honor Lungu's instructions. In a video released on June 13, 2025, Zulu, speaking on behalf of the family, reiterated that Lungu had explicitly stated Hichilema should not be involved in his funeral. Tasila's role in these announcements suggests she is actively shaping the public perception of the family's stance. Her emotional delivery and political stature amplify the impact of these statements, positioning her as a bridge between the family's private grief and the public's mourning. Political implications. Tasila's involvement has political ramifications, as she is seen as a potential successor to her father's influence within the PF. Her leadership in the funeral dispute has galvanized PF loyalists, who view her as a defender of Lungu's legacy against perceived UPND aggression. However, her alignment with the family's decision to bury Lungu in South Africa has also drawn criticism from some Zambians who believe a state funeral would better honor his national contributions. The family's declaration didn't happen in a vacuum. Zambia's political terrain is sharply divided between PF loyalists who still revere Lungu and UPND supporters who believe the former president should face accountability. PF officials like Given Lubinda and Makibi Zulu continue to defend the family's decision. Given Lubinda, this is not about power, this is about dignity. Lungu deserves respect, even in death. On the other side, UPND voices claim the family's refusal to return is a strategy to avoid investigations into unexplained wealth and secret assets abroad. Cornelius Mwitwa, government spokesman: "We are not chasing anyone, but no one is above the law, not even the family of a former president." The Patriotic Front, Edgar Lungu's political party, has been a staunch supporter of the family's position, reflecting the deep loyalty of its members to Lungu's legacy. Their reactions to the funeral dispute and the family's statement are multifaceted. Support for the family's stance. The PF has consistently backed the Lungu family's decision to prioritize a private funeral in South Africa. The party organized a private memorial service at Pretoria's Sacred Heart Cathedral on June 10, 2025, attended by Esther and Tasila Lungu, signaling their alignment with the family's wishes. The PF dismissed the government's plans for a state funeral, directing mourners to its headquarters rather than the government-designated lodge in Lusaka. This defiance reflects the party's belief that the UPND is attempting to politicize Lungu's death for its own gain. Accusations against the UPND. PF loyalists have accused the Hichilema administration of using Lungu's death as a springboard for political advantage, as stated by Information Minister Cornelius Mwitwa. They allege that the government's insistence on a state funeral is a public relations stunt to project unity while ignoring Lungu's wishes. The PF also claims that Lungu was barred from traveling abroad for medical treatment, a charge the government denies, arguing that earlier access to care could have saved his life. These accusations have fueled the narrative of persecution among PF supporters. Internal challenges. Lungu's death has left the PF in a leadership crisis, as he was the party's unifying figure. The party has been plagued by factionalism since its 2021 election loss, with divisions between leaders like Miles Sampa and Given Lubinda. PF loyalists view the funeral dispute as a rallying point to consolidate support and honor Lungu's legacy, but the lack of a clear successor complicates their efforts to maintain cohesion ahead of the 2026 elections. Public mobilization. The PF has actively mobilized its supporters to mourn Lungu at its headquarters and sign a separate book of condolence, countering the government's official mourning protocols. This has created confusion among Zambians, as the party's actions have deepened the public sense of division. PF loyalists see the family statement as a justified response to UPND overreach, reinforcing their commitment to defending Lungu's legacy against what they perceive as a hostile government. Legal drama around the funeral. The conflict peaked when the Zambian Attorney General's office filed legal motions to block Lungu's burial in South Africa, insisting that a former head of state must be buried with national involvement. The Lungu family resisted. They claimed that the funeral had become politicized and that government interference was driven by ulterior motives. As courtrooms in Lusaka and Johannesburg debated burial rights, the family quietly began removing personal belongings from Zambia. Insiders say real estate was sold, accounts emptied, and employees dismissed. This wasn't just a symbolic retreat, it was a full withdrawal. The UPND government, led by President Hichilema, has taken a firm stance on the funeral arrangements, emphasizing national interest and legal precedent while rejecting accusations of persecution. Push for a state funeral. The government has argued that Lungu, as a former president, is a national figure whose burial should be handled by the state. Citing the precedent of Kenneth Kanda's burial in 2021, where the government overrode family wishes to bury him at Embassy Memorial Park, the UPND insists that Lungu's body should be repatriated for a state funeral with full military honors. Attorney General Mulalo Kabesha filed a lawsuit in the Pretoria High Court to halt the family's plans for a private burial in South Africa, arguing that Lungu belongs to the nation of Zambia. A grave has already been prepared at the presidential burial site. Denial of persecution claims. The government has vehemently denied allegations of restricting Lungu's movements or access to healthcare. Information Minister Mwitwa described claims of a travel ban as a fiction and emphasized that Hichilema's administration would not replicate the harassment Hichilema faced under Lungu's presidency. The UPND has also rejected accusations that its anti-corruption campaign unfairly targets Lungu's family, asserting that legal proceedings against Esther and Tasila Lungu are based on evidence of wrongdoing, which the family denies. Efforts at negotiation. To resolve the funeral dispute, the government sent envoys, including Foreign Minister Malambo Haimbi, to South Africa to negotiate with the Lungu family. An agreement was briefly reached on June 16, 2025, allowing Hichilema to preside over a state funeral, but this collapsed when the family accused the government of altering the funeral program without consultation. The government's subsequent legal action in South Africa, which halted a planned burial on June 25, 2025, underscores its determination to assert control over the process. Call for unity. Hichilema has publicly called for peace, love, and unity during the mourning period, framing Lungu's death as an opportunity for Zambians to come together. However, his decision to end the national mourning period on June 20, 2025, citing the need to resume normal life, was seen by some as dismissive of the family's concerns and the public's desire for closure. Is this self-imposed exile? Analysts are now asking, is this a family in mourning or a former regime going underground? While there's no official legal order forcing the Lungu family to stay abroad, their actions suggest permanent departure. Multiple reports indicate that several family members now reside in Johannesburg. Properties have been leased or sold, and international lawyers have been engaged to protect their assets. Critics say it's a soft exile, not of punishment but of choice. The funeral dispute encapsulates a clash between legal obligations and emotional priorities, with both sides entrenched in their positions. Legal arguments. The Zambian government relies on legal precedent and national interest to justify its stance. The High Court's ruling in the case of Kenneth Kanda established that former presidents are national property and their burials should follow state protocols. Attorney General Kabesha argued in the Pretoria High Court that Lungu's burial in South Africa would deny Zambians the opportunity to pay their respects. The court's decision to halt the family's planned burial on June 25, 2025 until August reflects the legal weight of the government's position. Constitutional lawyer John Sangwa has noted the need for clearer laws on presidential funerals, but the current framework supports the state's authority. Emotional tensions. For the Lungu family, the dispute is deeply personal. Edgar Lungu's dying wish to exclude Hichilema from his funeral reflects the depth of their rivalry and the family's desire to protect his dignity. Esther Lungu's affidavit highlights the emotional toll of losing her husband and the perceived betrayal by the government's actions. The family's insistence on a private burial in South Africa is driven by their belief that a state funeral would be a mockery, given the ongoing legal cases and political hostility. The public nature of the dispute, including the abrupt announcement to mourners at the Cathedral of Christ the King in Johannesburg that the burial was halted, has added to their distress. Impact on mourners. The standoff has caused significant confusion and sadness among Zambians. The government and PF set up competing mourning venues and condolence books, leaving the public unsure of how to honor Lungu. The cancellation of the state funeral and the delay in repatriating Lungu's body have deprived many Zambians of closure, exacerbating the emotional toll of the dispute. Public reactions. Zambia is split. Across Zambia, the response has been intense and deeply divided. Round pushpin in Lusaka. Some call the family's exit a betrayal. Others call it self-preservation. Mobile phone on social media. Hashtags like hashtag Lungu family gone, hashtag justice first, and hashtag no return have trended. Studio microphone. One Lusaka youth posted, "If they've done nothing wrong, why are they running?" Another replied, "After what was done to ECL, who wouldn't run?" The public remains torn, not just on the family's decision, but on the broader question. Can Zambia honor a fallen leader while still holding him accountable? The Lungu family's statement that they no longer wish to return to Zambia and are seeking to change their immigration status in South Africa raises the question of whether this constitutes a self-imposed exile. Evidence of exile. Esther Lungu's affidavit explicitly states that the family does not feel safe or welcome in Zambia due to ongoing oppression and persecution. The family's decision to remain in South Africa, where they arrived in January 2025 with Lungu for medical treatment, suggests a deliberate choice to distance themselves from Zambia. Esther's claim that Lungu fled Zambia to seek refuge from a hostile political climate further supports the notion of exile. The family's legal battles, including charges against Esther and Tasila, and their perception of targeted harassment by the UPND government, provide a rationale for their decision to stay in South Africa. Counterarguments: the Zambian government denies any persecution, asserting that the family's legal troubles are a result of legitimate anti-corruption efforts. The family's continued engagement in Zambian court cases, as noted in Esther's affidavit, indicates they are not entirely severed from the country. Additionally, their decision to bury Lungu in South Africa may be more about honoring his wishes than a permanent rejection of Zambia. Some Zambians, particularly UPND supporters, view the family's actions as an attempt to garner sympathy and maintain political relevance rather than a genuine exile. Ambiguity: the situation is not a clear-cut exile in the traditional sense, as the family has not been formally banished or stripped of citizenship. Their decision appears driven by a combination of emotional, political, and legal factors, making it a self-imposed withdrawal from Zambia's political and social sphere. Whether this becomes permanent depends on the outcome of their legal battles and their ability to secure residency in South Africa. The public response to the Lungu family's statement and the funeral dispute has been polarized, reflecting Zambia's divided political landscape. PF supporters, PF loyalists, and Lungu sympathizers view the family's statement as a justified response to UPND aggression. Social media posts, such as those from @Zambian Observer, amplify the narrative of persecution, with some accusing the UPND of lying and causing division. These supporters see the family's decision to bury Lungu in South Africa as a stand against government overreach and a way to honor his legacy. They also express frustration over the lack of closure due to the cancelled state funeral. UPND supporters of the UPND argue that the family's refusal to allow a state funeral disrespects Zambian traditions and denies the public a chance to mourn a former president. Comments on platforms like the Zambian Observer suggest that some view the family's legal troubles as evidence of corruption during Lungu's presidency, with sentiments like, "We all know the kind of hooliganism that took place under Lungu's watch." These supporters back the government's legal efforts and see the family's statement as an attempt to evade accountability. General public: many Zambians, regardless of political affiliation, are saddened and confused by the dispute. The competing mourning venues and the prolonged uncertainty over Lungu's burial have left the public grappling with how to pay their respects. Some, like constitutional lawyer John Sangwa, emphasize the need for a legal framework to avoid such conflicts, while others express a desire for reconciliation between the PF and UPND to heal the nation's divisions. International perspective: leaders like South Africa's Cyril Ramaphosa and Kenya's William Ruto expressed condolences, highlighting Lungu's regional influence. However, the international community has largely stayed out of the funeral dispute, leaving it as a domestic issue that underscores Zambia's political tensions. What happens now? Zambia now faces an unprecedented question. Can a former president's family abandon the country he once led? Will this set a dangerous precedent for other political families? And does the government have a moral or constitutional duty to bring them back? Legal experts say there is no law forcing the family to stay, but politically, the damage is already done. The Lungu name, once synonymous with power, now floats in exile. The ongoing dispute raises questions about Edgar Lungu's legacy, the legal framework for presidential funerals, and the prospects for closure in Zambia. Lungu's legacy: Edgar Lungu's presidency, 2015 to 2021, was marked by significant infrastructure development, including roads and regional connectivity, which earned him praise from supporters. However, his tenure was also criticized for economic mismanagement, leading to Zambia's 2020 debt default, and for heavy-handed security measures. His death and the funeral dispute have cemented his image as a polarizing figure, with supporters viewing him as a victim of political vendettas and critics pointing to governance failures. The PF's leadership crisis further complicates efforts to preserve his legacy, as the party struggles to unite without his charismatic authority. Legal framework: the funeral dispute highlights the absence of clear laws governing the burials of former presidents in Zambia. The precedent set by Kenneth Konda's burial suggests that the state has significant authority, but constitutional lawyer John Sangwa argues that family wishes should be respected. The Pretoria High Court's ruling to delay Lungu's burial until August 2025 indicates that legal battles may continue, potentially setting a precedent for future cases. The government's insistence on repatriation underscores the tension between national protocol and individual rights. Closure: the prolonged dispute has denied Zambians the opportunity for collective mourning and reconciliation. The government's decision to end the mourning period prematurely and the family's refusal to repatriate Lungu's body have left many feeling disconnected from the process. A resolution that balances the family's wishes with national expectations could provide closure, but the current standoff suggests this is unlikely in the near term. Final reflection: a nation without closure. As the sun sets on the legacy of Edgar Lungu, the country is left with questions. Was this the quiet departure of a grieving family, or a calculated escape escape from justice. Is this the end of Lungu's chapter, or the start of a new, underground phase in Zambian politics? For now, the family's message stands as final. Zambia is no longer our home, but for millions of Zambians, divided by grief, anger, and uncertainty, the search for truth and closure still continues. This documentary is based on publicly available sources, court filings, press briefings, and interviews given by key figures in Zambia and South Africa. It is presented purely for informational and educational purposes, with no political affiliation or agenda. The Lungu family statement and the funeral dispute are symptomatic of deeper divisions in Zambia's political and social fabric. Political polarization. The feud between Lungu and Hichilema, which began during their electoral battles and continued through legal and political conflicts, has spilled over into death. The PF and UPND's competing narratives, persecution versus accountability, have entrenched divisions, with each side rallying its base. The absence of a unifying figure like Lungu in the PF may further weaken the opposition, potentially strengthening the UPND's position ahead of the 2026 elections, but at the cost of democratic pluralism. Social impact. Zambia, a predominantly Christian nation that values mourning rituals, has been shaken by the confusion and chaos surrounding Lungu's funeral. The public's inability to mourn collectively has deepened feelings of disconnection and frustration, with some fearing that the dispute will leave lasting scars on national unity. Path forward. For Zambia to move beyond this division, both sides must prioritize dialogue and compromise. The government could acknowledge the family's grievances and offer assurances of fairness in legal proceedings, while the family could consider a state funeral as a gesture of national unity. However, the entrenched mistrust makes such an outcome challenging. Broader implications. The situation reflects broader challenges in African politics, where personal rivalries often overshadow national interests. The dispute over Lungu's burial echoes similar conflicts, such as the burial of Kenneth Kaunda, highlighting the need for clear legal frameworks and mechanisms for reconciliation. Conclusion. The Lungu family statement, "Zambia is no longer our home," encapsulates a profound sense of alienation driven by a bitter political feud, a contentious funeral dispute, and ongoing legal battles. Tasila Lungu's leadership, the PF's defiance, and the UPND's insistence on state control have deepened Zambia's divisions, leaving the public caught between competing narratives. The legal and emotional tensions surrounding Lungu's funeral underscore the need for clearer laws and a commitment to reconciliation. Whether this marks a self-imposed exile for the Lungu family or a temporary withdrawal remains uncertain, but the saga has exposed the fragility of Zambia's unity. As the nation grapples with Lungu's legacy, the path to closure will require navigating complex legal, political, and emotional landscapes, with the hope of restoring the spirit of one Zambia, one nation.